it took us all by surprise. And and this is not false humility. It takes me completely by surprise every year.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Live Through That, the companion podcast to my book of the same name, where I look at influential 90s musicians and where they are today. I'm your host, Mike Hipple, and on this podcast, we'll dig a little deeper into a pivotal moment into the lives of some of the artists I feature in the book, as well as artists whom I love and respect. Today's episode is our special Christmas episode. I'm actually not a huge fan of Christmas songs. I find them to be a little too similar with the bells and the sparkly musical bits. I'm not a Scrooge per se, but it's generally not my thing. But I do have a handful of songs I love at this time of year, and at the top of that list is the Waitresses' Christmas Wrapping. It was initially released in 1981 and has gone on to become a seasonal classic. It's been covered by everyone from the Spice Girls to Kylie Minogue and Iggy Pop, but really nothing compares to the original. And our guest today is the guitarist of the Waitresses and the songwriter of Christmas Wrapping, Chris Butler.
Our label head, Michael Zilka, came up with an idea. He said, "Hey, I'm going to ask all of our artists to write Christmas songs, and we shall make a Christmas album." Now, we were working our tails off. Our actual LP was in the can, but couldn't be released because Michael's label had lost its distribution. And we were working to plug I Know What Boys Like. So we kind of needed this like a hole in the head. Hopefully he would, abandon the idea, forget about it, and we would just carry on and wait for our record to come out in the following year. So here we are out on the road and, coming back at some point in August of 81, and Michael contacts us and says, "I have booked you into Electric Ladyland." What? Well, yeah, to record the Christmas song. And oh man, okay.
Michael Zilka was the head of ZE Records, which released the album that Christmas Wrapping was first included on. It was a compilation album that also featured tracks from Alan Vega, Christina, and Nona Hendrix.
In 1981, my bands and my record label were getting amazing press, but we were really not getting any sales. And I needed to find some kind of commercial hook to sort of hopefully, gussy up sales, and so that Chris Blackwell would keep financing my label, because I was distributed by Island, and in return, he'd been financing me. But my debt was getting considerable. And it occurred to me that there had been Christmas albums in the past, notably Phil Spector's, and that they'd been really cool. So the thing about a Christmas album is you've got to record it in April and May. So it not necessarily at a time when you're feeling particularly Christmassy. And also, in the case of my bands, they wouldn't necessarily be associated with Christmas that much because some of them were quite dark. And we had also just released a compilation called Mutant Disco, which had been a big success. And so I thought compilations were a good way of showing what we were doing and showcasing the label. So I asked all of my artists if they would do a Christmas song. And they all seemed puzzled by it. But at the same time, it's not like there was any reason not to do a Christmas song. And Christmas songs, it's always interesting to sort of, I think it's always interesting to write something on commission as opposed to, just sort of do it in a vacuum, because it focuses you in a way. So each of them wrote a Christmas song, and Christmas Wrapping was Chris Butler's.
I had to cobble together something, and I worked at the time by kind of grunting into cassettes, then fight until I came up with something, and then try to expand it into a song. I had a couple riffs lying around, and I am very much at the time I was very much a Scrooge, and Christmas was always a pain in the neck for me because of kind of my crappy family, and it just I was always broke around Christmas time, and I had to buy presents for people that I didn't really care for, and so Christmas was kind of a downer. So I decided to write against my own a type, and do something that was hopeful and upbeat, but also capture my exhaustion at the time. So along comes the idea of an O. Henry twist, and someone who just doesn't want to hear about it. This year, being 81, and just go to just celebrate in her own way, on her own, and literally throwing together lyrics, uh, stream of consciousness. And it is a cliche, but I did finish them in the taxi cab on the way over to the studio. Now, our band were a bunch of pros, so we certainly did rehearse and come up with something. We also, even though it was a we thought a throwaway project, we were going to give it our all because we're pros. And at the rehearsal, I had a guitar part and a horn lick and the very beginnings of a bass line, just da 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 da, and kind of threw it at the band and said, do something with this, please. And they did. And we wound up at Electric Lady with a wonderful engineer producer, Mike Frondelli. And I think they gave us 3 days. So the first day was the backing track, second day vocals, and third day was mixing. There it is. We thought, okay, we've done our bit, and turned it in and went back out on the road, and promptly forgot about it. And that's also a cliche, but it's true. It was like, all right, we've done our bid for the label. Let's get back to business. That's how the song came about.
Here's Michael Zilka again.
It fit well on the album. It really was more upbeat than a lot of the others. The song that closed the album, It's a Big Country by David Sigerson, was also fairly upbeat, but some of the others weren't. I think what was great about Christmas Wrapping is that it wasn't cynical at all, and it wasn't dour. It was just upbeat, happy, a love story, everything a Christmas song should really be.
Christmas Wrapping was released in 1981, and it took off that holiday season.
I remember being in Rochester, New York at the end of November, or maybe early December, and I called. We were playing a show, and I called my girlfriend at the time and said, just checking in. And she said, "Man, you are all over the radio." And I thought, finally, all this humping of I Know What Boys Like has paid off. And she said, "No, no, your Christmas song, that thing." Oh, Jesus. Well, we relearned it at sound check and then played it that night. And it stayed in our repertoire until we imploded. So it took us all by surprise. And and this is not false humility. It takes me completely by surprise every year, to have come up with something that was considered an okay tune, but uh, and I'm reluctant to use the word throwaway, but a side project, a bit of a non sequitur to what we were doing, to have that stick in the culture, is pretty amazing and humbling, to be honest.
You should only make records that you love, because then if they don't sell, you're still left with something that you're proud of. If you do something just because you think it'll sell and then it doesn't, then you're left with nothing.
It's, air quotes, classic. Wow. And if I had known that it was going to, have a long life, I would not have date stamped it. I said no, most of 81 is along those lines, right? I would have, most of this year or something like that. But the lyric says 81, so maybe that's part of the nostalgic appeal. I'm not sure.
The creation of the song was truly a band effort.
Real credit goes to Tracy Wormworth, who made this is a song that people listen to just because of the bass line. I mean, she was fabulous as a player and really took my little kind of grunting and made it her own. And I did come up with the horn line, but Mars should be credited with the arrangement and the harmonies. It's triple tracked. He played tenor and alto. We had our friend Dave Buck on trumpet, and Mars did the arrangement of the harmonies, and boy, it came together quickly. The thing that I've noticed is the things that have stuck were things that were written when I was under pressure or a hard deadline. Christmas wrapping was definitely under a hard deadline. Square pegs was we had literally 3 or 4 hours to come up with something, and while the band was kind of relaxing at the pool, I'm sweating away in my hotel room trying to come up with something in mid afternoon because the TV producers had booked us into Motown West Studios at 7 o'clock that evening. So I think what seems to work for me is being under pressure. I can write under pressure. The songs that I labor over and that are a luxury or self indulgent for myself, or really pleasurable to write, uh, have never seemed to have the same impact as things that, like, the gun is to your head, first thought, best thought, you have to go with it, and um, it's done.
What does Chris think makes a song such an enduring classic?
Well, I think, and I've thought about this a lot because I'm not really sure, and I've asked other people, and I know that I'm not a Scrooge. I'm a Scrooge in recovery. All right, that song just sounds so great over a car radio when it's compressed and EQ'd by a radio station. It just roars, and it's hard not to feel excited or moved by it. But that doesn't answer the question of why it's stuck to the culture. I think one possible answer would be that people want to know that there's a force for good working in the background, and the song is all about missed connections, but towards the end, the rap is the wrapping around, WRAP, of the story, with the kind of O. Henry ending, where try as you might, you can't connect, but some kind of force in the background, whether it's the Christmas spirit, or whatever spiritual entity or thing you think works in your life, that it's there and it's working for you constantly, that you can't even screw it up, that something good is working in the background that will make everything turn out all right.
In the years that followed its release, the song only grew in popularity and eventually became the Christmas classic that it is today. In my mind, the holiday season doesn't really begin until I hear this song. But there's more to the story of how Chris became the artist he is today. In 1970, he was a student at Kent State University when 4 people were killed and 9 others wounded by the Ohio National Guard during a protest at the school. Also at the school at the time were other students who would later go on to become popular musicians: Chrissie Hynde from The Pretenders, members of Devo, and Joe Walsh. This event proved to be a pivotal moment for Chris.
Jeff Miller was a friend of mine, and I was with him up until we separated briefly during the commotion, and I did not learn that he was murdered until the 6 o'clock news, because there was such a commotion and panic and disbelief that my girlfriend at the time and I had to take off, because the FBI was everywhere, CIA was everywhere, there were agent provocateurs, and obviously after the I mean, I'm here by the grace of whatever, because I ducked and Jeff didn't. When the shooting started, I heard someone yell, they're shooting blanks. And I thought, oh, maybe not. And I ducked behind a car, and the glass above me, bullets went through the glass, and I was covered with broken glass. And I was about 20 feet from where Allison Krauss was murdered. Didn't know it at the time. And yeah, Jeff, we had just separated briefly. And then on, seeing Walter Cronkite talking about this horrible event, and there's his picture. So, yeah, dark day, dark day. And a dark day for so many people. Terry Hynde, Chrissie Hynde, Jerry Casale from Devo, Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo, Joe Walsh. All of us experienced this horror, and it grew you up real fast. It's almost too much for any 19, 20-year-old, and it was too much for me. I have PTSD because of that experience, and it is the single most profound determinist experience of my life, because it set me down a path that I didn't think I was going to go. I had to find an individual identity and line of work, because I could not find any place for myself in a culture that tried to kill me. Absolutely. Not just music, but a much larger making a niche. The way it's parallel to everyone I mentioned, because we not only had to, either write songs or get good on an instrument, we had to carve out some kind of alternative career, al- alternative space. Devo being the most extreme example of it, because they invented an entire alternate universe with its own language and costumes and aesthetic, and uh, they were the masters of it, and an inspiration to me, because we had to find a space for ourselves that was not conventional, because the hostility and unwelcome, okay, extreme alienation after that incident means you have to find your own way, and not let the bitterness and anger consume you. You have to use it to construct some kind of life, good life, and space for you to create if you were creative. In this case, all these folks I mentioned are very creative, but you need room, and you need to survive, but you need to prosper and flourish, and you have to fight. You have to fight for that. Well, the thing about Kent State is you always feel like, you have to make up for lost time, and the time is extremely precious. And if you have ideas, if you want to do fun and creative things, you better do them. There is no. Uh, those National Guard bullets, if they killed 4 people and wounded 13, but it also killed no. It killed anything about accepting denial or being denied or thwarted or frustrated. If you burn to do something or create something, absolutely, you have to give it 100% all the time and every day and every second. To live when others didn't is a great responsibility, frankly.
At 73, Chris is still active creatively, still writing music, playing drums, and even making short films, and says he's in the midst of one of the most creative periods in his life. Thank you to Chris for telling his story on the creation of a Christmas classic, and to Michael Zilka for sharing his recollections as well. Just a reminder that my book on 90s artists, Live Through That, makes a great holiday gift for the music fan on your list. And from now through January 3rd, you can get 40% off by using the code HOLIDAY40 at the link in the show notes. In addition, my earlier book, 80s Redux, is available wherever you buy your books and also makes a great gift. If you like this show, please subscribe so you'll know when the latest episode comes out. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook at Mike Hipple Photo, all one word. Thanks for listening.